They laughed at my silence, until that silence destroyed their reputation. I still remember the sound of their laughter, sharp, cruel, echoing through the dining hall like tiny knives. They weren't strangers, they were my family. My husband, my in-laws, the people who claimed to love me. But that night, every smile carried poison. Every word was a reminder that I didn't belong. I sat there, pretending not to notice their whispers about my dress, my voice, my background. My mother-in-law's smirk. My sister-in-law's mocking eyes. My husband's silence. That hurt the most. I had always believed that silence was grace, but that night, it felt like punishment. They thought I was weak because I didn't fight back. Because I chose dignity over drama. But in that moment, something inside me broke. Quietly, completely. And I promised myself one thing. If they wanted to see the power of silence, I would show them. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't scream, it whispers. They always called us the Thompson family of grace. From the outside, we looked perfect. Elegant house, beautiful smiles, polished Sunday dinners. But inside that polished image, love had conditions. Respect was selective. When I first married Lucas, I thought I had walked into a dream. His mother, Evelyn, hugged me at the wedding and whispered, "Welcome to our family, dear." Her perfume was sweet, her words weren't. I realized later that what she really meant was, "Welcome to our rules." The Thompson home was a stage, and everyone had a role. Evelyn, the flawless matriarch, always hosting parties, showing off her expensive china, her perfect children. Richard, my father-in-law, sat quietly at the head of the table, nodding to everything Evelyn said. Clara, my sister-in-law, was the family jewel, loud, glamorous, and adored for her drama. And Lucas, my husband, well, he was the quiet shadow that followed his mother's pride. I tried to fit in. I really did. I learned how they dressed, how they smiled for photos, how they spoke about maintaining class. Every dinner felt like a performance. When I spoke, no one listened. When Clara spoke, everyone laughed. Evelyn would interrupt me with that same phrase every time. "Oh Maya, that's sweet." Sweet. Dismissive. Like I was a child trying to speak among adults. There were moments that fooled me into believing I belonged. Sunday brunches, family picnics, shared laughter, but even then, I saw it. The small looks. The slight changes in tone. The way Evelyn would compliment Clara's diamond earrings, then glance at my plain silver ones. The way Lucas would avoid meeting my eyes when I looked hurt. Once, during a family dinner, I brought a homemade pie, my mother's recipe, warm from the oven. Evelyn took a bite, smiled stiffly, and said, "Oh, it's simple." Then she placed her fork down and moved on. Everyone followed. Not one word after that. I sat there, smiling through the silence, pretending not to notice the pity in Ava's eyes, the only one who ever seemed to see me. In that house, silence was a survival skill. I thought if I stayed kind, if I respected them, they'd eventually see my heart. But the truth was, they didn't want my heart. They wanted my obedience. Sometimes, when the lights went out and the laughter faded, I'd stand in front of the mirror and whisper to myself, "Maybe tomorrow, they'll love me." But tomorrow never came. Because slowly, something darker began to grow beneath all that glitter. Whispers, comparisons, cruel jokes disguised as family fun. One night, during yet another perfect dinner, Evelyn raised her glass and said, "To family, and to those who try their best to keep up." Everyone laughed. My husband included. I smiled. I didn't say a word. But inside, a storm had begun to rise. And soon, they'd all hear it. It started with something small, a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. One afternoon, I was arranging flowers in the living room when Evelyn's voice drifted from the kitchen. "Lucas deserves someone who represents this family. Maya's too plain. She doesn't fit the Thompson image." I froze, every word slicing through me. Clara giggled. "Mom, she still shops at thrift stores. Can you imagine her at our charity gala?" They didn't know I was standing behind the door, holding my breath, gripping the vase so hard my fingers turned white. I wanted to walk in, to shout, but instead, I stayed still. That's what I always did. Stay quiet. Stay small. Later that evening, Lucas came home, humming, acting like everything was fine. I asked him, "Do you think I embarrass your family?" He looked startled, then sighed. "Maya, They just have a certain way of doing things. You don't need to take it personally. That sentence, "you don't need to take it personally," burned more than any insult. After that day, everything shifted. The small humiliations became deliberate. Clara would forget to tell me about family gatherings, then post smiling photos online. Evelyn would correct my table manners in front of guests, smiling as she said, "Oh, don't worry, Maya's still learning our ways." Richard stayed silent, the kind of silence that agreed with every cruelty. Even Grandma Ruth started noticing. One morning, she found me wiping tears in the pantry. She placed a trembling hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Child, some people confuse pride with power. But pride always cracks." I smiled weakly. "I just wish Lucas would see it." She looked at me for a long moment. "He will, when it's too late." Then came the incident that changed everything. Evelyn announced a grand charity event to honor the family's legacy. Everyone was excited. Except me. I wasn't even included in the planning group. When I asked Clara if she needed help, she said, "Oh, Maya, this isn't really your scene. Just come and look supportive." So I did. I dressed simply, quietly, and stood among them while they glowed under the chandeliers. During her speech, Evelyn smiled at the crowd and said, "We're proud to represent generations of class and refinement. My daughter Clara is proof of our family's grace." No mention of me. Not even my name. I stood beside Lucas, hands trembling, a stranger in my own family. When the applause died, Evelyn looked at me, then deliberately turned her back. That night, Lucas tried to comfort me. "Mom didn't mean it that way," he said softly. I stared at him. "Then how did she mean it, Lucas?" "When she pretends I don't exist." He looked away, and that silence told me everything. The next morning, I found my name missing from the family's official website. Under family members, Clara's photo gleamed beside her fiancé's. My spot was gone. I went to Evelyn, my voice shaking but steady. "You removed me." She smiled, sipping her coffee. "It's not personal, dear. You don't quite represent what we want the world to see." Something inside me snapped. For the first time, I didn't hide it. I leaned closer and whispered, "One day, Evelyn, the world will see who you really are." Her smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was enough. Because in that moment, the woman they mocked, ignored, and erased, finally stopped being silent. It's strange how cruelty can become routine, how disrespect starts small and then grows bold once they see you won't fight back. Weeks passed after Evelyn erased my name from the family website. The house grew colder, even when filled with laughter. I became invisible in plain sight, the quiet background to their perfect show. Every morning, Clara would strut through the living room in her designer clothes, tossing her perfume into the air like victory. "Maya," she'd say with a laugh, "you really should upgrade your style. You look like one of the helpers." Evelyn would chuckle softly behind her teacup. "She's modest, dear. That's her charm." Their sarcasm hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. When guests came over, Evelyn introduced everyone proudly. My husband Richard, my daughter Clara, her fiancé Nathan, and then, with a forced smile, "And this is Maya." Just Maya. No relation. No pride. Just a name floating in the silence. Lucas would look down, pretending not to notice. I learned not to expect his defense anymore. His silence had joined theirs. The final straw began to form during Clara's engagement preparations. Evelyn insisted on handling everything herself, the decorations, the guest list, the catering. "Maya," she said one afternoon, "you can help in the kitchen. That's more your area, right?" Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were sharp. So while Clara tried on gowns and posed for photographers, I stirred sauces, set tables, ironed napkins. I told myself it didn't matter, that respect doesn't come from attention. But every laugh from the next room chipped at that belief. Then came the rehearsal dinner, the night they decided my humiliation should be entertainment. The room sparkled with guests, chandeliers glowing, champagne bubbling. I stayed near the back, holding a tray of desserts because Evelyn said the caterer was one short. Suddenly, Clara clinked her glass. "Let's play a fun game," she said. "Everyone, describe one word that fits each family member." Laughter followed as people shouted compliments. Elegant, for Evelyn. Strong, for Richard. Charming, for Nathan. When it came to me, Clara grinned. "Maya?"
Him. Simple.
The crowd chuckled. Evelyn added, "Yes, our sweet, simple Maya." Everyone laughed, except me.
I looked at Lucas. He didn't say a word. Not one.
That night, when the guests left, I found myself standing alone in the dark kitchen. The echo of their laughter still rang in my ears. I stared at my reflection in the oven glass. Red eyes, trembling lips, a woman trying too hard to stay gentle in a house that thrived on cruelty. Grandma Ruth entered quietly, her steps slow but sure. "You don't deserve this, child," she whispered. "Silence has its limits." I nodded, my voice barely a breath. "I know. But when silence breaks, it should be unforgettable." Something in her gaze shifted. Pride, maybe fear. The next morning, I walked past Evelyn and Clara at breakfast. They were scrolling through social media, posting glamorous rehearsal photos. Evelyn looked up and said, "Maya, make sure the guest video for the engagement is ready. Don't mess it up."
I smiled.
"Oh, I won't." Because by then, my silence had turned into strategy.
And the video she just mentioned?
That would be the beginning of their downfall. It happened on the night of Clara's engagement, the night they decided to finally break me.
The house glowed like a palace.
Guests in glittering gowns, music echoing through marble halls, cameras flashing as if the entire world had come to celebrate their perfect family.
I stood quietly near the staircase, dressed simply as always.
Evelyn had insisted I wear beige, something modest, dear. You wouldn't want to stand out. I didn't know then that the color choice was deliberate, a background shade for the humiliation they had planned. Halfway through the evening, Evelyn tapped her glass. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" she announced. "Before we raise a toast to Clara and Nathan, we have a special family surprise."
My heart quickened.
I looked at Lucas, confused.
He avoided my eyes.
A video began playing on the grand screen, photos of the family through the years. I smiled faintly at first, until I realized something was wrong. Every frame, every moment, I was missing. Vacations, birthdays, holidays, all carefully edited to erase me. Even our wedding photo had been cropped so that only Lucas remained.
Laughter rippled through the crowd.
Someone whispered, "Did they cut her out on purpose?" Evelyn smiled sweetly. "Oh, that's just a small error. But I suppose it fits. Some people were never really part of this family anyway."
The hall fell silent.
I felt every heartbeat pounding against my ribs, every breath burning in my chest. My eyes searched for Lucas, my husband, my supposed partner. But he looked down, pretending to adjust his tie.
That moment broke something inside me.
I walked out quietly while applause resumed, the clinking of glasses echoing behind me. Outside, the night was cold and merciless. My reflection in the glass door looked like a stranger, pale, trembling, erased. I sat alone by the garden fountain, the laughter from inside faint but sharp. I thought about my parents, how proud they'd been when I married into this respectable family. How my mother said, "Keep your head high, Maya. Respect wins hearts."
Respect. What a fragile word.
Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't sob.
I had no strength left for that.
It was the silence that scared me, the stillness inside me, the calm before something inevitable.
Later that night, Lucas found me there.
"Maya, please, don't take it so seriously," he said.
"Mom didn't mean to hurt you."
"It's just her way." I looked at him, empty.
Her way?
To erase me from her own family. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You're making this bigger than it is."
That was it, the final cut.
I whispered. "You stood there. You saw me disappear, and you said nothing. You've already chosen your side."
He didn't reply. He didn't have to. I went to my room, locked the door, and sat in the dark.
My phone buzzed. Ava had sent me a text. "I'm so sorry, Maya.
You didn't deserve that.
Evelyn asked the editor to remove your photos." I overheard her.
So it was deliberate.
Every frame, every cut, designed to erase my existence. I felt anger, not wild, but sharp, precise.
Like a blade forged from silence. I stood before the mirror again.
My eyes were swollen, my heart aching, but beneath that pain, something new was awakening, resolve. I whispered to my reflection, "You wanted to erase me, Evelyn. But soon, the world will see who you really are." From that night, my grief turned to focus. Every cruel word, Every fake smile, every insult, I began to store them like evidence.
Their own pride would become the weapon they never saw coming.
Because betrayal, I realized,
wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of their downfall.
And though my voice had been silenced, my silence itself had started speaking, in ways they could never imagine.
That night, I stopped being their victim, and began becoming their consequence.
For a long time after that night, I lived in two worlds. The one inside the house where I was invisible, and the one inside my head where every humiliation replayed like a slow-burning film. I stopped pretending grief would heal me. Instead, I learned to count it. Each insult, every edited photo, each smile that hit a stab, I catalogued them. Respect, I decided, would be my compass.
Revenge would be my instrument. I began quietly. I learned how to make the small things visible.
I logged the nights Clara refused to include me in planning, saved the emails where Evelyn asked for edits to remove me, and kept screenshots of social posts that erased my face. Ava slipped me a USB one afternoon. "I don't agree with this," she said. "You should know." It held invoices, charity receipts that didn't add up, and a list of payments labeled miscellaneous that matched a shell charity Evelyn mentioned in passing. My hands shook when I read them. Anger steadied them.
Grandma Ruth's voice guided me more than anyone.
"Don't be loud," she told me, folding her hands like prayer.
"Be right.
The world can forgive noise, but it will never forgive truth left unproven."
Her patience was a weapon. She taught me to gather proof that could not be dismissed as spite. "People will call you bitter if you shout," she said.
"They cannot call you liar if you hold the receipts."
So I learned to be clever.
I recorded conversations when Clara's sneer turned into confession. I printed bank statements, matched dates, noted witnesses who had seen Evelyn's donations vanish into private accounts. I reached out to a friend from my old job who knew a videographer, someone who could make a simple montage look like a polished reveal without drawing suspicion. I practiced my face for the camera until I could be unreadable, calm, controlled, a portrait of dignity.
There were nights of doubt.
I pictured Lucas finally looking at me and saying, "You didn't have to do this."
I pictured Grandma Ruth worrying the plan would destroy what little peace remained.
I feared being called vengeful, exposed as petty. But every time fear crept in, I thought of the way Evelyn smiled when she erased me. I remembered how they laughed while I sat at the back, how they made humiliation a family joke.
That memory hardened into resolve.
My plan had 3 parts: gather irrefutable evidence, secure allies who would stand when the house crumbled, and create a public moment that could not be gaslit away. The evidence was already stacking in folders, digital and paper. Ava agreed to vouch for what she overheard. Nathan, who had always seemed to value truth, offered to introduce me to an independent editor who owed him a favor. Grandma Ruth promised a spoken testimony about years of subtle cruelties no one else thought to record.
It was risky.
If I failed, I would be exposed as the woman who tried to shame her family for attention. If I succeeded, I would ruin reputations, fracture alliances, and be blamed for the fallout.
I had to accept both outcomes.
This wasn't about breaking them because I wanted to hurt. It was about ending a system that humiliated people in the name of class.
I practiced my part like an actor with a single scene that would change everything.
I rehearsed the timing of the video, the moment the receipts flashed on screen, the exact phrase I would say that would make silence cut deeper than any shout. I told myself again and again, dignity doesn't beg.
It exposes.
On the day I set things in motion, I dressed simply, the same beige they like to call modest.
My hands were steady.
My chest felt like a drum, quiet and fierce. I walked into the room full of polished faces carrying nothing but a small USB and a calm I'd earned the hard way.
I pressed play.
And for a second, as the screen came alive, I wondered if the world would finally listen, or if I would be the one left to pick up the pieces alone. The night of Clara's grand engagement reception gleamed like a crown, glittering, perfect, deceitful. Chandeliers shimmered above a sea of laughter, and Evelyn glided across the ballroom in gold silk, glowing with pride. Every detail screamed flawless family. Every guest carried their admiration like currency. I stood near the edge of the room, holding the remote to the projector in my trembling hand.
They thought I was invisible again, the quiet shadow at the edge of their empire. Tonight, that would change.
The event's host, one of Evelyn's society friends, tapped her glass. "A special video tribute, curated by the family's lovely daughter-in-law, Maya," she announced cheerfully. Evelyn's smile froze for a second, then returned, confident.
"Yes," she said sweetly. Maya's gift.
Let's hope she kept it simple.
Laughter. Again. The same laughter that had haunted me for months.
The lights dimmed.
Music began.
The opening scenes were soft, the familiar montage Evelyn expected. Clara's childhood, family gatherings, vacations. People smiled, murmured approval. Evelyn's expression relaxed.
At least she did something right, she whispered to Richard.
But then, at exactly the 2-minute mark, the tone shifted.
The screen flickered. The music cut.
And a new set of clips appeared, not from happy memories, but from truth. A recording played, Evelyn's voice, sharp and cold.
We can't have someone like her representing this family. She's too plain. Too small. Gasps rippled through the crowd.
Evelyn's face drained of color. Another clip, Clara's laughter. She looks like one of the staff, Mom. Then Evelyn again. As long as she stays quiet, she's useful.
Whispers filled the room. Lucas's jaw clenched.
Nathan stared, stunned. Then the screen displayed numbers, bank statements, screenshots, transfers. Evelyn's charity fund money routed to her personal account. The projector illuminated every line, every date, every lie. Evelyn rose to her feet. Turn this off, she barked, but the microphone caught her voice and echoed it across the ballroom. No, I said softly, stepping forward.
My voice didn't tremble. Not this time.
Every face turned toward me, the woman they'd mocked, the one they erased. This family preaches class, I said, my voice steady, almost calm.
But respect isn't built on lies.
For years, I stayed silent because I thought silence was peace. But silence became your weapon, and tonight, it becomes mine. Clara screamed, You ruined everything.
I looked at her. No, Clara. You ruined yourselves.
I just pressed play. Guests began to murmur, journalists, sponsors, family friends. The Thompson name that Evelyn guarded so tightly now trembled on every tongue. Lucas stood frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief. Maya, how could you?
I turned to him. How could I?
How could you let them destroy me, one insult at a time, and call it love? For a long second, no one spoke. The music had stopped. Even the air felt heavy with truth.
Then Grandma Ruth's voice broke the silence.
Frail but fierce. About time someone showed them what respect really looks like. The crowd parted as she stood, trembling yet tall. Evelyn collapsed into her chair, shaking her head, muttering, You don't know what you've done.
Oh,
I know, I said quietly. I gave your silence an audience.
Nathan looked disgusted.
Evelyn, you used charity money? In my company's name. The room exploded into whispers and shock. The perfect family image shattered in one night. Evelyn buried her face in her hands.
Clara stormed out. Richard followed in stunned silence.
Lucas took a step toward me, then stopped, unsure whether to comfort or confront.
I didn't wait to find out.
I turned toward the crowd, my voice steady once more. Sometimes, truth doesn't need anger. It just needs the courage to be heard. And as I walked out of that glittering hall, away from their applause, their shock, their guilt, I felt lighter than I had in years.
Behind me, the screen still glowed with my final slide.
Respect cannot be edited out.
The hall was silent.
But inside that silence, justice finally spoke. The morning after the engagement reception, the Thompson mansion was quiet, the kind of silence that follows a storm. The chandeliers still hung, the flowers still bloomed, but something in the air had changed. The laughter that once filled those walls was gone, replaced by whispers and unanswered phone calls. News spread faster than Evelyn's lies ever did. By dawn, the perfect Thompson family was trending online, but not for their grace. Articles exposed Evelyn's fraudulent charity. Invitations to her elite circles vanished overnight.
Richard resigned from his board position.
Clara's engagement was postponed indefinitely. Nathan wanted space to reconsider. As for Lucas, he came to my room before sunrise. His eyes were red, voice trembling. Maya, he said softly, you didn't have to destroy them like that. I looked at him, calm and tired. Destroy them?
Lucas, I just told the truth.
They destroyed themselves the moment they mistook silence for weakness.
He dropped his gaze.
I never defended you. I let them.
I stopped him with a hand. Don't apologize now. Respect that comes too late isn't respect.
It's regret.
He didn't argue.
He just stood there, silent, the same silence that had once hurt me, now finally empty of power. I packed my few things that morning, not out of anger, but peace. Grandma Ruth was waiting for me in the garden, her cane steady in her hand. She smiled faintly when she saw the small bag over my shoulder. "So you're leaving, child?" she asked. I nodded. "It's time." She sighed, her eyes shining with pride. "You didn't raise your voice, but you made the world listen. That's strength, Maya." I hugged her tightly. "I didn't want revenge, Grandma. I just wanted respect," she whispered, "and you earned it the only way it lasts, through truth." When I stepped out of that mansion, the air felt lighter. The sun was rising, soft and gold against the marble walls that had once felt like prison bars. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because some endings don't come with noise, they come with peace. Over the next few weeks, people reached out, friends I hadn't heard from in years, distant relatives who finally saw the real story. But I didn't respond to many of them. I wasn't interested in their sympathy or curiosity. I had learned the difference between being seen and being respected. One evening, I sat by the same fountain where I once cried in silence. The water shimmered under the fading sun, calm and endless. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Maybe revenge isn't always about destroying others. Maybe it's about rebuilding yourself where they tried to break you. Before leaving the city for good, I received one last message from Evelyn, a single line: "You've ruined this family." I replied simply, "No, Evelyn." I freed it from lies. And that was the end. I was never their silence. I was the echo of everything they tried to hide.